throughout the work and so on. If I don't do that aspect of the work successfully, then as far as I'm concerned, it's weak. Because anybody can have opinions. People write letters to the editor all the time, you know, expressing their specific opinion on this issue and that issue. That is not my aim. My aim is to look for something more permanent, more durable, visually. Even though somewhere in there, there are messages, there are allusions to politics and social issues and so on.
I'm actually going to get back to the creative aspects in just one moment, but back to the theme, and that is as sailing with the ship. And this year you've used the exploration of headpieces of fancy sailor masks to refer to different situations. If you can just, in your eyes as the artist, link the old mass or the old culture to the current situations that the world, Trinidad and Tobago, is facing.
Yeah. Well, you know, art, painting and so on can be multi-layered. So in a work in which I have a traditional character like a sailor carrying a headpiece that alludes, let's say, to the war in Gaza or something like that, then I may be simultaneously be paying homage to a tradition in our carnival while making a commentary about a current, you know, troubling issue. So it was if you want, a clever way of combining visual with homage, with social and political observation on an international scale if necessary. So it was a way of interweaving these various elements.
You quoted as saying it's one continuous look of life, like a band parading through the years. Does this also speak to your story as to who you are as an artist, or so what you see as an artist? Is the life of Jackie Hinkson that is put into these murals as well?
Well, I do. You see, you have to understand that certainly I, as an artist, work largely in an intuitive way. I am not very conscious of exactly what I am doing, what I am saying. I allow my intuition to guide me. So, as you can see from the image there, I have the sailor characters with their headpieces, but I trust my intuition as to what kind of headpiece to make here, how big to make it, you know, what color to use. And you're right, what an artist produces is always a reflection of how he or she is responding to life, to his or her experiences, observations, locally and internationally. So I, like everyone else, am constantly responding, if only emotionally, to everything that I see around me in my society and in the world. So yes, I am in the work. My thoughts, my emotions, and hopefully they also represent, to a large degree, the experiences of the wider society.
Mr. Hinkson, a question that's a bit off topic, but focuses a bit more in depth into the stories. You said that you're not leaving Trinidad, you're staying, you're not going anywhere else, which is very, it's not, I wouldn't say it's an interesting perspective, but it's unique in the sense that within recent times, you're hearing more and more people saying, no, I'm that's it. I think I don't have anything else for Trinidad. Trinidad has nothing else for me. Yes. So please tell me a bit more as to what Trinidad means to you.
Well, I suppose the experiences that leave the most permanent deepest impressions, you know, on your mind and your memory and everything, is what you experience in your childhood and youth and so on. You know, and those experiences are indelible. There's no way that I could have gone through my youth here, what I did, how I played, how I worked, how I got on with my contemporaries, where I lived, the community I lived in, the family. Having gone through all of that, you know, the sheer respect that I feel for all of those experiences and for the country, for its landscape, for its seascape, for everything. I cannot abandon that for another culture, for another social environment. I cannot. But that's my decision. I fully accept that some other people, you know, can. I mean, I clearly remember when I returned here from university in 1970, it was the year of the Black Power movement. I remember people were leaving the country in droves to go and live in Canada and Australia and so on, just when I was returning home from university. I can't do it. I can't do it. Maybe my children can, but I can't do it.
No, it's unique, isn't it? As you are returning to your home, you're seeing people in large numbers leaving.
Yeah.
At no point in time did you feel disconnected? Have you ever felt disconnected?
No, not disconnected. I might look around me and see things that I don't like, but disconnected, no. I mean, there are things that remain permanent here. The quality of light, the landscape, you know, to mention just one small area, a certain capacity of people to create in a certain vivacious, you know, compelling kind of way. I was in a panyard last night, and this lady was doing an incredible dance in front of the band, you know, all by herself. She had not the audacity, she was compelled to do it, and it looked so great, you know. That kind of spontaneity, I don't think I would see that anywhere else. I don't think I would.
Before I get back to sailing with this ship, throughout the course of this interview, throughout the course of any interaction with you, you always seem so light, so happy. There's always some level of passion. What brings that out?
I'm not aware of that. That might be some kind of inherited genetic feature, you know, the tendency to laugh. My mother was a person who laughed constantly.
It's a good thing, by the way.
So it doesn't necessarily mean that inside I am happy. I'm not saying that I am or I'm not, you know. I'm just saying that tendency to want to laugh and smile and so on is, I think I inherited it in my genes from my mother. But you mentioned that one feature about my art and my painting and so on is a certain, I have seen, and other people have commented on it, is a certain quietness bordering on not a sadness. I don't know how to describe it. When I paint a landscape or a seascape, it never seems tonally and in its mood. It never seems to be as happy and jolly and as most other artists do. So maybe
you're not necessarily always painting with your eyes. You're more so letting your mind do the movement.
Yeah. As I said a little earlier, I live like you or anybody else, and you have experiences. You observe the life around you. You observe what is happening at all levels, leadership, everyday, neighborly, domestic, communal, community and so on. And slowly, you form a vision about your society and about the world. What you try to do as an artist is to project that vision you have of human condition, if you wish, on canvas.
When you were painting when you were painting this particular part of the mural, what is it that you were seeing or feeling?
All right, well, as I say, when I mean, you look at that, any viewer looking at that work would say, my God, yes, he's talking about, he's alluding to the crime situation, the background building is the Royal Jail, and questions that are asked everywhere, who is next? You know, police commenting on police brutality and parents saying he was a good boy. So on the surface, it seems to be quite an unpleasant subject. What I was trying to explain just now is that when I am painting that aspect of the work is in the back of my mind, in my subconscious somewhere. What I'm focusing on there is, where do I place that figure? What gesture do I give it? When should I change the color from yellow to green? How do I tilt the Republic Bank Visa card at a certain angle so it creates a continuous rhythmic movement across to the next one that says who is next, and so on? How do I do all of that? My focus is on those demanding technical questions about composition, bringing together. But I know that underneath in my subconscious, my mind is also on the content in the imagery and so on. So it's a complex process that I clearly, and I don't think anyone can fully explain in a logical way how the art process works, how complex, how layered it can be. I mean, at first glance, you've seen a lot of words, and one might think, well, words? I mean, why not images? Why words? But if I'm presenting words, note that I'm presenting them in a certain size, within a certain shape, using a certain color. So right away, I'm interweaving, what words say with visual elements of color, movement, rhythm, and so on.
Next photo, guys.
Yeah. This is a very good example of how I have meshed carnival characters and carnival incidents with social or political commentary. The idea of two bands clashing is an old one, dating back to the so-called Barjon days of carnival. So I have two bands here, one yellow, one red, and they're clashing, and the flag women are carrying their flags, one yellow, one red. So I'm trying to capture, if you want, the animation of bands clashing with the idea, with a political commentary about, the relationship between the two leading parties in the country. And to add atmosphere and to attract the viewer's attention, I have used in the background the Green Corner building, which was a famous corner where bands met, gathered, where people went, and so on. And on the right side of that image is one of those typically, what do I call it? Those publicities for things like fetes and parties and so on. And I said it is on stage. But if you look carefully at the words, you'll see they all refer to some personality, and it refers to an incident where some report was carried to the president, and soon after it was delivered to the president of the country, it was retrieved or withdrawn by a mysterious person.
So
and these are the characters involved here. you know.
I liked how you utilized traditional mass and a historical aspect of TNT, and to the right, the traditional form of advertising in TNT or commentary in TNT.
So I have, you know, I was constantly trying to, as I say, to interweave, you know, mass, traditional mass, with current issues, you know, that affect us. Here again, I've tied in a lot of things here. Many people won't remember, unless you're a certain age, that Lucky Jordan was a famous rum shop bar in George Street, I think, where on every carnival Monday morning there was what was called a bomb competition, where steel bands would play a tune that was not part of the calypso scene. They would take a tune from international music, pop music and so on, and play it. And that would be called a bomb competition. But bomb, of course, has more than one meaning. Mm-hmm. So here I'm referring to the Russia-Ukraine war. And if you notice that the flag, the man carrying the flag who seems to be running out of the picture, is a Ukrainian flag.
Yes, yes.
And the name of the pan that he's holding, ODUS, is the word Exodus. So he is now escaping the Russian invasion, attack, and so on. One of the bands carries the pan, says invaders. The flag in the background says Red Army. So I'm constantly moving back and forth from mass, as we know it, to international issues. The headpieces on the military people, you know, a plane, a rocket, and things like that.
That is incredible. That is absolutely incredible.
All right, this is the beginning of the first big mural I did. And when I began it, I was interested in, as I say, paying tribute to early carnival and the history that you know, influenced it or that was taking place at the time. And I began with what looks like something like a barroquete on the far left, and the person on it is Queen Isabella of Spain, is in a barroquete. And next to her are these robber characters, and on their headpieces are the sails of Columbus's ships. So that way, I'm introducing carnival and history. And I go on to show some traditional characters against the backdrop of the type of architecture that you saw, that I saw as a child in the 1940s. You know, and then the Dame Lorraine and so on.
Yes.
And the thing evolves, you know, I continue, and the story and the narrative evolves like that. Now, I understand that a lot of viewers under the age of 50 wouldn't fully grasp what it, but it doesn't matter.
But you're also giving them the opportunity to experience what Trinidad was.
Or to tell some sort of story while alluding to, as I say, national and international issues, or realities. I mean, I suppose in a lot of these murals, I occasionally create a sense of chaos or rapidly moving something. So the tumbling movement of the rubber hats as it moves across the painting is supposed to take you through that kind of rhythm. Mm-hmm. And constant allusions, like KFC I allude to often, because it's such a powerful presence in our daily lives. You know, one headpiece has an oil rig, and the robber's cape is a $100 bill. I'm just trying to tie in things. The hat, the robber's hat on the left, are 3 stumps that have been scattered, like when a cricketer gets bowled out, And it's hinting at the state of cricket in the West Indies, where we're in trouble. You know, wickets are falling, and then the QRC becomes a representative of the idea of education. The tower is leaning, and because it is widely believed that something is wrong with the education system and it needs to be fixed, and so on and so on. So I want to hint at all these ideas while creating a movement across the mural.
Let me ask you, Mr. Hinkson, to describe, as you said, from what you would have seen growing up in the 1940s to now, the evolution of Carnival and TNT, and whether or not, in your opinion, we've lost the essence of what TNT's Carnival is about, or should be.
Yeah, it's tempting for a person of my age to say, yes, we've lost something and so on. But at the same time, I feel that Carnival and so on, or a large part of it, or parts of it, reflect what popular feelings there are. If in my youth, when there was a bigger gap between the middle and the lower classes, if the mass that came out of the lower classes had an element of, not fear, but resistance in them and so on, then to me that was just reflecting economic and social reality of the times. If in the ensuing decades things have changed with oil wells and so on, and that middle class has grown, is a much bigger middle class and so on, then the need to show resistance is no longer there. And I'm simplifying things here, and that will be reflected in people's tastes. So I accept that if the majority of people just want fun, I accept that as a reality. You know, if within that there are pockets of more incisive commentary, then I accept that too. And I try to avoid being judgmental about how people should play, what kind of mass they should play. There's no way, the way calypsos were sung, the content and all of that, back in the 1950s, there's no way it's going to stay like that forever. It evolved into soca. You hear a lot of music now that is just pure rhythm and beat, but within that, there are also more nuanced, creations that tell us something about ourselves.
Is managing the visual aspect of it, and as you've described it so eloquently, the rhythm. How do I angle this? Where do I put an arm? Where do I place the leg? The lighting. It certainly is I wouldn't say it's difficult, but it certainly speaks very much to the mood or the emotions at that point in time.
Yeah.
When painting it, managing the. I think the rhythm, the visual elements is quite interesting, and that is why I'm curious to know, do you paint, do you sketch, whatever art it may be, what is attractive or what could be a long-standing message?
Certainly I don't automatically paint what is attractive. Sometimes I'm paying, as I say, I'm paying tribute. Let's say I want to pay tribute to our landscape. So I guess the word attractive can be used there. But at the same time, I'm also painting, as I say, what I feel about life. So I can inject my feelings about life and the human condition into that landscape and interpret it in a certain way. So as I say, you get 5 artists to paint the same landscape, you're going to get 5 different paintings, different emphases on emotions in different directions and so on. So I'm doing both. I'm doing both.
Your quoted as saying, I felt if I used carnival characters in a symbolic or metaphorical way to represent local and international situations, then it would make an interesting visual narrative. But in that same line, you went on to say, I am not a commentator. But you're presenting a visual narrative. So maybe it's not the words coming out your mouth, but you're still commentating on everything that you see. What do you see yourself as?
Well, that's why I tried to explain that the art process is a complex one, and it can be, and I think in my case it is multi-layered. So several things can be happening simultaneously in a work of art. Clearly, from these works, I am some sort of commentator, but at the same time, I want to inject some poetic mood into the work, and those are not necessarily contradictory. I mean, and as I try to say, it is a process that I and no one else, as far as I'm concerned, fully understand. It is so complex that I don't fully understand it. So I'm several things at the same time, it appears.
Well, Mr. Hinkson, as we're coming to the end of this interview, and as I've said, it gives me great pleasure. It is certainly a joy and an honor to have this conversation. What do you want people to gain from your work? What do you want them to experience or feel from your work?
Well, that's another very, very big question. I'm not sure. I am not sure. I just know that I am projecting my vision of life, of the world, of the human condition, and I'm showing it to you. I don't want to direct, a viewing public as to what they should feel or see. I leave that for them. And if, as I think the work is multi-layered, it's natural to expect that different people will interpret the work in a different way, would put the emphasis on this or that or the other thing. So I don't want to tell people what to feel. I can just hope that somehow I have I've exposed to people some sort of reality about life, and that if they see it, and if I have done it in a compelling way, then I have contributed to, quality of life of people.
Mr. Hinkson, thank you so much, sir, for your time this morning.
It's such a complex thing that I hope I haven't confused you.
Not at all. Complexities are always a good thing. It keeps your mind running. It really expands your horizons. But I also think that it's quite intriguing and a good thing if even the artist at times cannot fully describe the piece in its entirety.
Yeah. Yep.
I think that's a very, very good thing.
It's not just good, it's inevitable.
Mr. Hinkson, thank you very much, sir. Have a good one.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Ladies and gentlemen, what a treasure of a conversation, what a treat of a conversation we have been privy to this morning. We're going to take a break here on AM Prime. I'm going to have a quick change of attire because I think the shirt is not doing me too much justice this morning, is it? Anyway, we'll be right back after this.
Like many others trying to save on Carnival, Gabby thought she should go for 50% off makeup.
What about the other side? Well, Daisy 50% off offer. So, you know.
No makeup artist we don't know. What we do know is the savviest savings for Carnival are at KFC. Get a Jab Jab box, 1-piece chicken, 1 regular fries, and a biscuit for only $25.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm not to do with that.
I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break the balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have 2. Lamar don't
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No,
of this game.
not no.
Let's go to the last part.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
Welcome back to AM Prime, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much to Mr. Jackie Ingson for joining me on the program and for that extensive interview that we had this morning. As we continue with the Thursday edition of the program, I want to welcome my next guest. He is the author of the column Increased Resources for Children Born into Chaos or Face Their Mounting Rage. And the column is most interesting. It delves into historical context of Trans-Tobago, various areas, and what they have faced or even what they feel. What have we seen and what is done? To speak more on it, I'm joined by Mr. Noble Phillip. He is a retired business executive, a journalist, columnist, and he's with me virtually this morning. Hello, sir. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well.
Well, thanks so much for joining. Let me start. The title of your column says Increasing Resources for Children Born into Chaos. Let's start by defining, in this particular instance, what you mean by chaos.
The lives that the children live is a life of chaos, meaning that from birth they are bombarded by factors that are outside of their control and factors which cause them to have a life that goes into what I would call uncontrolled existence. They are bombarded by crime in their neighborhoods. They're bombarded by schools that are not working. They're bombarded by families that are dysfunctional. And we can go on and list an entire list of items that are not conducive to raising a child who is whole and well.
Mm-hmm. You've focused a lot on various communities throughout Port of Spain and in environs, and you've said that such communities are symbolic of poverty-stricken communities. You've also mentioned that they remain invisible. Why do you suppose that is the case? I mean, if so many individuals throughout Trans-Tobago and so many activists have pointed out, in particular, these areas, why do you suppose they are deemed as invisible?
Well, they're invisible because when we wish past in our cars, we wet them with the water from the roads and the drains that are not well maintained, and we don't even stop to say sorry. You know, and when we have our conversations at the national level, nobody asks the woman from Manzil or Chatham. What do you think about this? Because as far as we're concerned, she is not important, and she has nothing to say or to add to the conversations. So in a very real sense, they're invisible. And the point I made about the Laventel Beetham estate with the berm, as we call it, which was essentially a wall being built to block the drivers from seeing what's inside of the disaster area, that adds to the invisibility. You know, when we drive in our cars with our AC units on, we don't smell the filth that's on the road. So in many ways, we don't see because we don't want to see what is happening.
And you're arguing that the wall that was built, and if I'm not mistaken, it was for the Summit of the Americas and then the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. I think that was 2007, 2008, around there. In particular, just is a symbol of the ignorance these communities have faced.
Yeah. I mean, if we think about the case that really irritates me and saddens me, and I mentioned it in the version that you probably have read, the Alan Ramdale case. A young child, the day before he went missing, was talking to Watson Duke, who was passing to collect votes. He lived in a freezer. Obviously, the freezer was not operational, but was put there by the government to help the fishermen of the area. So you provide a facility that is not maintained. People are living in it, literally in squalor. You talk about the problem because you want to score political points. And when the child goes missing, there's absolute silence from you. So don't come and tell me that some people are concerned and others are not. Tooth bagay, they are not concerned. All right, and that's the unreasonable position we have taken. And then when these children grow up traumatized, hurt, they come to lock your neck or they come to hold a gun to my chest. We wonder why they're so bad. They're not bad. We are the bad ones. That's the point I want to make.
Now, you just use that term traumatized. They may grow up traumatized. And at times it seems as though trauma is so casually accepted. Drawing reference to another example of that shooting, I think 2 years ago at the Rose Hill Primary School, the Minister of National Security stated that the children were not in danger as such, but it's the trauma associated with the event, and he was most casual about it. Is that something you're seeing too often, where we are just casually ignoring trauma and just allowing such to grow and grow within our society?
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. We do not believe in mental health. We do not believe in mental trauma. We do not believe that these things can affect generations and change the way we are growing as individuals. We just don't believe it because, again, it doesn't happen to us. Therefore, how could it be true? And that's the tragedy of our society. We are uncaring people who criticize those who are bearing the pain of our neglect and then expect them to give us a blight. It doesn't happen that way. Nowhere in the world.
It's interesting that you take that perspective, Mr. Phillip, because those who are critical make the argument that such individuals have chosen a life of violence. They speak the language of violence. And it's most interesting that you've taken this standpoint, because people will say, I criticize them because they could choose to do better or choose to do different.
Well, I hear that all the time. I also hear people who say, I lived in similar circumstances and look at me, I'm good. And the argument I raise all the time is that is not true. That's not true. When you lived in those circumstances, the conditions were different. And I'm not saying all, because you can point to Kareem Marcel in the Beetham, who's a lawyer now. There are exceptions, but it's not generally the case. And that's the point I'm making. You know, when these children are resorting to violence in school because you haven't taught them how to express themselves, you haven't taught them how to deal with the lessons, so that you are frustrating the delights out of them in the classroom, and you're promoting them to even embarrass them more. What do you expect them to do? What do you expect them to do? That is the tragedy of our country. We keep promoting children who are not well-fed, who are not taught, who have all kinds of handicaps, and expect them to say, well, I pass for whatever school it is. But the reality is, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. Sorry.
So let's now get to the solution of which you've mentioned, increasing resources. What resources in particular would you identify as necessary or at this point crucial for trying to deal with this situation, suppress the rage that these children are growing up with?
Well, we don't have to look very far. And I would admit from the very get-go that it is a complex problem, all right? But we don't have to look very far. In Jamaica, they ran an experiment. And I have to call it an experiment because they did not follow through with it, in which they took women from a particular deprived area. So just like how we have the Beetham, they have certain areas just like that. And they took women from those areas and they provided for them prenatal care, as well as childbirth, as well as early childhood education. And they proved that these children were able to succeed in life. So an initial resource I would like to see is, in fact, the caring of our women who are bearing children. And I know some people are going to say to me, well, they choose to bear children for a man who doesn't mind them. Yeah, but that's the next complex issue. So are we going to then say to them, forget about the child, forget about you, because of the circumstances of the conception? Then I would say in return, forget about you. Whatever you get, take. So we have to be very careful with the question of resources, because it's always as if we are beggaring the nation when we look after those who are less fortunate. I'll give you an example of the way I think about this stuff. You have a Down syndrome child. Should you not give a child more care than the child who is not suffering from that syndrome? Yet in Trinidad, the association that looks after Down syndrome children is starved of funds and resources. So I am not here arguing only for the children of the Beetham or Banstilla or Sandy Grande. I'm arguing for the fact that what we need to do is sit down as a nation and say, okay, how can we provide more for our children so that we don't end up with damaged children who in turn damage in their rage the society in which we want to build.
Mr. Philip, if you yourself have admitted that we have become such an uncaring, selfish population, is a conversation like that even possible?
Sadly, it is not possible, because those who make us invisible are the ones who would not have the conversation. On the other hand, about 2 weeks ago, I was in a conversation with some women and 3 men. There were 10 of us, and we were discussing the issue of education as it relates to crime. These women were ordinary people. So they're not the guys who drive in the BMWs and the Porsches. these men are hardworking, ordinary citizens, and they came from different parts of the country. All right, they were at a crime symposium held by the People's Roundtable. I happened to be there to moderate the conversation. They were articulate, they understood what the issues were, and a question was asked which resonated with me. Why can't we not have this conversation nationally?
Mm-hmm.
From a woman, right, who is a security guard. She's asking the question, why can't we not have this conversation nationally? And I will tell you, that's a question that has resonated with me, because every single point they raise was a relevant point if you are interested in education in society. They weren't schooled people, they didn't go and get their PhDs. But I can tell you, because I know the literature, that the points that they were raising were valid points. But we don't want to hear that. We want to hear how bad the government is, or how bad the opposition is. And we don't want to speak to each other. We want to curse each other instead and politicize every issue because we want to score points. And in the meanwhile, the society gets worse.
No, I hear you very much in respect to that point, but I will shift it to the political aspect, because a lot of it deals, I think politicians respond to what the people will say. And in that regard, I don't mean that politicians are taking on everything that people are complaining about. All that you've pointed out this morning has become so synonymous with the cries and the pleas of people here in TNT. The issue is, when it comes to elections, politicians will feed to people whatever it is they want to feed, whatever it is they think people want to hear. And it's also fueled a lot by racism. So a part of it, Mr. Phillip, is an attitude shift in people. Do you think it starts with there before it can even get to the top? Do you think it starts on the ground with people changing their mindset, their ways and their attitudes before it gets to the top?
Well, I have a different view of politics to you. All right. The reality of finance, campaign finance, the tender entrepreneurs, the guys who give money to get contracts, they have corrupted politics. So what you see when we see the politicians respond to those who raise their voices is a naive view, because they respond insofar as, and I'm going to use the Trinidadian word, insofar as they can throw to us scraps, or what we call a kakada, right? Enough to keep us quiet.
Mm-hmm.
But fundamental changes will never happen until we get campaign finance reform, because the guys who have the money, they're the ones who call in the shots. And we have to understand that completely. They're the ones who are exploiting racism for their own benefit. They want us to be divided. They want us to be separated, because they recognize that if we join together, it is not going to be game as usual.
Mr. Phillip, I'm sorry for interjecting. I'm not arguing against that. I fully agree and understand that. My argument is, why is it that we as a people keep falling for such? I don't know. I keep asking such questions. What you're saying this morning, I'm very much aware of. I've expressed similar sentiments, and you hear that. You hear such frustrations. Yet, why it is that we keep falling for these traps?
Well, the point I was going to make is that answer. We have to go back to the way society was built. And I'm going to say something, and there are going to be people who are going to argue against it, but let me tell you my view of this thing. The Africans were brought here in slavery as tools or vehicles for growth, economic growth, for people who are in the minority and people who live many miles away. When they were given their right to be free, the same people turned around and brought in the indentured labor, which was another race. And they told both sides, don't trust the other. They characterized the Africans as lazy, and they characterized the East Indian as immoral. Does that sound familiar? Isn't that what we're still talking about today? That, my dear friend, is the problem. And all that we are not recognizing is that the structure has not changed. The names may have changed, the faces may have changed, but nothing else has changed. The same divisive system is perpetuated by the inheritors of the system.
Then whom is out of touch with who?
We are both out of touch. The powers that be are out of touch with the reality that society is going to collapse. That's the out of touch part of it. And we have a deficit in understanding because they do not recognize what happened to Eric Williams in 1970, where his base turned against him. All right? We who are on the other side of the fence, we are out of touch because we are not realizing that the problem we have is not our fellow man. The problem we have comes from the system under which we live. And until we turn our eyes and do the correct analyses, we are always going to look at what we have compared to what somebody else has and say, but what happened here? Well, what happened there is the system wants it that way. And it doesn't have to be that way. That's the problem. Both sides are out of touch.
Mr. Phillip, my final question to you is, it's always easy having such conversations, how deep people are willing to go. You know, even at times people would say it's so controversial, we stay far away from it. But I'm of the opinion that it's a lot easier to have these conversations. The difficult part is the conversation is actually turning into something meaningful, where you see some level of change taking place. Do you suppose change starts with conversation? We've been having these conversations for years. When do you suppose TNT will start changing this direction, changing this course? And when do you suppose that this selfish and caring nature of which we've all become will actually be reversed?
Well, I'm old enough to have a mother who says, those who don't hear will feel. Sadly, we are only going to change it when we feel. And I'll give you an example. When I graduated from secondary school, I went to QRC, had a good education, graduated. I went for an interview in a bank because the school sent me to that interview on Independence Square, the head office at the bank. The person invigilating the exam helped my peer, who was also in my class, what we call Trinidad white guy. He didn't help me. I overheard him telling the guy what a penny was in Canadian terms. I answered the question based on what he told the other guy, and he was upset with me. I didn't get hired. However, within 2 years, after Daga and the rest passed through Port of Spain, we suddenly saw the Chinese and the white tellers change into black and then eventually East Indian tellers. That's how change comes. When people get fed up and threaten the system to mash it up, then the system says, hold on, take a little thing here now. And that's how it works, unfortunately.
So do you suppose it's inevitable that TNT is going to go through such, careful with my words, but it sounds as though
Find the words.
a revolution.
Call
it
it.
sounds as a revolt. Vote
Yes,
for a
call
revolution.
it.
Is it
Call it.
inevitable?
If we don't change, as I said, if we are not in a place where we listen, then we pay to listen.
Mr. Philip, go on. Sorry.
I am not here as a revolutionary. I spent my entire life in business. I spent my entire existence in business. So I'm not here as a wild-eyed radical. I'm here as an observer of the society, and I'm saying to you, we are tipping towards chaos, like there is in Haiti, right? Like there is in Jamaica. Jamaica has started to turn around because the business class is more patriotic than our business class. And I make no apologies for that.
Mr. Philip, I want to thank you very much for your time this morning and for expressing your views. I look forward to future conversations, but the last sentiments of which you've expressed, you're not the first individual whom I've heard that from. So it's intriguing how the conversations or the directions of the conversations are flowing here in TNT. Thank you very much for your time, sir.
Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Have a good day. Ladies and gentlemen, let's take a break here on AM Prime, and when we return, we'll get into some other conversations this morning. We'll be right back.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, The Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378, or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
Folks, we're back and better than ever.
Your show have always appeared to be a show that is focused on going to the cause or looking to the cause.
We hardly ever talk about the white-collar crime, though. We always talk about the ones that involve more as physical violence against individuals.
The citizens will only measure transmission when water starts to flow through their taps.
The Constitution doesn't talk about local election.
Contract mafia that's responsible for looting the country, and they own and operate these politicians.
So if you are running a country and you can't say nothing as a prime minister, please take up your bag and go.
It is not comparative to the murder figures, but it is in fact very high.
I believe he's protecting certain individuals.
You are watching Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Just give an overview of what exactly is that split arrangement.
Now you don't need to register nothing. You don't need. We can do that another time. But then it becomes a hit, and then everybody starts to want to claim.
The laws that predate many of the independent countries' constitutions are going to be those colonial laws.
We know there are an infinite amount of circumstances that would lead to a murder.
I have a great idea and, I have a great concept, but until it's actually expressed, it does not become intellectual property.
Accomplishments or targets of a forensic accountant is to quantify what may have been lost.
They believe in different criminals and we manipulated the law and we exploited the system.
A responsible journalist will reach out to the person who they have the information on for a comment.
Welcome back to the program, ladies and gentlemen. My next conversation focuses on the probate office. The judiciary agrees that probate matters take far too long. This was admitted in a two-page statement issued on February 7th in response to complaints of the probate process. I wonder why it's taken so long for the judiciary to actually respond to this issue, given that it's been raised within the last few years. Even from Tobago writing letters to the judiciary seeking some answers to what is causing the delays. After one article in a daily newspaper indicated that there are over 14,000, close to 15,000 actually, pending probate matters, and with 7,690 probate matters completed in 1,095 days between August 2020 and July 2023, it's still estimated that it will take 5 to 8 years to complete at the present rate. I'm joined this morning by attorney at law, Ms. Sain Singh, so we have a better understanding of the entire process and of the situation as a whole. She joins us virtually. Good morning, Ms. Singh. How are you doing?
Good morning. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here this morning.
Well, thank you so much for joining me on the program and taking the time out of your schedule. Let's start with this admission on the part of the judiciary that these matters are taking far too long. They've said it's threefold, but they've even indicated that it's not necessarily in their hands. Issues with recruitment, with the quality of applications. Let me start by asking if you can give us as brief as could be the entire process from an individual who passes on to the reading of a will to this entire matter with the probate office. Can you give us a process, please?
Okay, so most people will go through experiencing having a loved one die. And when that occurs, sometimes the loved one will have assets that are still in their name or shares in a particular asset that has to be dealt with. Now, they either die leaving a will or without a will. When that occurs, if they leave a will, we go through a process called proving the will. If they die without leaving a will, we go through a process called letters of administration. Now, when persons come into us, we go through the entire process in terms of what type of application they should make based on their particular circumstances. Those circumstances determine the type of application that we are going to make, because there are multiple type of applications, such as probate of a will, letters of administration of will annex, and each type of application requires different information on those applications. So we will go through that process with our client and then determine who is best to make that application, because not everyone is entitled to make the application. There is a hierarchy. When we determine who is best based on their particular circumstances, then we explain all the documents that we need, how we need to inform the beneficiaries, if there is a will, if there is the need to read out the will for all the beneficiaries to hear the contents of the will. And we start asking them to bring in certain documents that would help us determine what makes up the estate. What are the assets that makes up the estate? If it's real estate, if it is bank accounts, shares, bonds, anything that will help us determine what is the value of the estate that is going to go into the application. Now that process itself takes a little while.
Usually are these matters heard within a court? When there are arguments to be made, are they usually heard in court? Are they oral hearings, or is there no need for that?
So it is a paper application. It is a paper application that we are making to the Supreme Court of Trinidad and Tobago.
All right.
Yes. And because it is a paper application, the requirements that need to be in each application has to satisfy the registrar in granting or issuing that letters of administration or a grant of probate.
Now, one of the issues raised, according to the statement by the judiciary, is the quality of applications, saying that roughly 80% are returned to attorneys with significant and justified queries. So it speaks to the role of attorneys in particular. How do you, as an attorney at law, respond to the statement by the judiciary to that effect?
So the quality of applications is an issue because there are queries. A query is actually the judiciary asking you to clarify a particular statement you made or something that you had forgotten to put into the application, or sometimes just something that you did not actually account for. When an attorney drafts a particular application, we try to determine each and every aspect of what the registrar may require in a particular application. Each case is not identical. So what you would have is different requirements for each particular case. So one precedent will not work for all type of applications, or even one precedent in a similar type of application will not work for each and every single case similar to that. What attorneys who are experienced in probate do, we do try to minimize questions being asked by trying to account for things that we know that probate will ask for. So persons who are not experienced in probate may not actually put that into their application, and then they will get a longer query notice, so to say, right? For them to address the concerns that probate may have. Because you see, not everybody in law actually practices probate.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us do practice criminal, some of us are not experienced in other areas of law.
And that was
so
a point that was
we try our hands. Yes, we do try our hands at a different area, but it do come with experience and getting to know each type of application and what are the requirements of each type of application.
What are some of the issues that you faced in this entire process? And I'm speaking about experiences without going into particular details of any one case, but what are some of the issues that you faced and experienced that just add to the delays?
So the ones I experienced is when I make an application and it is first reviewed, I do not get a feedback right away from probate about if the application has a query or not. And sometimes months may pass before I actually get a query notice, or I may get a statement stating that there was no query notice issued and the file is by the registrar. So there is a delay in terms of when the file is first reviewed and when it reaches to the registrar for their review. That is one. And that delay is a few months. Well, there's also a delay that when a estate has been advertised. So it went through the process, there's no query notice issued, everything is good with it. The registrar gave their approval for it to be advertised. It is advertised in the respective gazette and newspaper. However, there is a delay from advertisement to the issue of grants. So we need that particular process to be sorted out and to be done in a more timely manner, because it takes sometimes months between the advertisement in a newspaper, and this is where clients, when they see their particular estate being advertised, they come to you and say, I see it advertised, so it can't be long now. And then months pass, sometimes 3 months, sometimes 4 months, without a grant being issued. And we do have a lot of client care with regard to probate matters, trying to allay the stress that this particular process have on people who are still mourning for their loved ones, people who are looking to settle some debts that their loved ones may have left, or just the distribution of the assets that was left by their loved ones, and they can't do anything until they get this particular document.
Now, you see, the thing is, since this matter was raised at the end of January, and this is ongoing, by the way, because as I mentioned a few years ago, attorneys from Tobago were raising this issue, and it's ongoing, but I've spoken to several individuals who have expressed to me and it seems so common. Everything they say is that, you know, the entire process, you know, the attorneys work hard, it goes through, and then all of a sudden there seems to be one issue which has to be rectified. The documents are then returned, and then there's another issue, and it seems to be a back and forth. There just seems to be a constant back and forth for checks being made by the probate office. And the impression is, it seems as though they look at the first page of all the documents, see an issue, then when it's returned and rectified, they then turn the page. It's an ongoing process that is very frustrating. Is that something that you yourself have experienced?
I wouldn't say that I have experienced much of that. What I have experienced is when a query is issued, sometimes some of the queries are not relevant. Probate have admitted that their staff are not, that they do need training, right, with regard to reviewing probate matters, because these are staff that are not, do not have a law degree. They are appointed by, I think, the civil service, which is Service Commission, I believe, and they do not have that particular training in checking documents that are drafted by attorneys. So sometimes certain queries we do believe are irrelevant, right? And should not have even been a query to begin with. Now, that doesn't mean that there are queries that are not irrelevant, right? But sometimes when we answer a particular query that is given, it raises another issue. Also, there are different persons, so there are two checks according to probate, right? There are the first review. So the first review is done, and then a query notice would be issued. After that, when you submit that particular document, it goes through another review before it reaches the registrar to further review the documents. And I think this is where certain queries that should have been issued in the first instance are now being picked up, which shouldn't be, because this creates an additional delay when we could have already addressed those things at the first instance, rather than waiting for it to be reviewed and reaching to the last stage before it comes back to us.
Are you satisfied with the judiciary's response to these issues? They've indicated that they continue to seek solutions. They've identified some solutions already that are already in place, such as annotated forms on the judiciary's website to help applicants, training sessions on drafting properly, introducing a system for managing searches through the e-probate portal. Those are just some of the measures that they've already established. But generally speaking, are you satisfied with the judiciary's response to this entire situation and their efforts to try and ease the burden faced by individuals who have had these delays?
So for a long time, we had the annotated forms that was on the judiciary website. The e-services platform that came into play when COVID hit Trinidad and Tobago, and we had to find an alternative form of filing documents. And we overcame those things. But what is not satisfactory, I believe, is that when judiciary says that their staff, they do not have control over their staff. They do not have control over who is appointed and their skill level and the training that is required to be in probate department in order to check these particular types of applications. And that seems to be that it appears that they don't have control over that. They may not have control over that for a very long time, so that the problem would persist with regard to delays. Now, one of the articles did mention that some of the delays are probably 6 years to 8 years. Now, those are based on statistics, according to the article, statistics or data gathered from probate department with regard to how many applications are made per year, how many applications were granted, and how many applications are outstanding. But probate department, it's not 6 to 8 years. Probate department actually reviews each application based on its own merit. Right now, in my experience, I have gotten grants in less than 8 months with regard to filing, within filing and actually having the grants in my hand, and that is as recent as last week. Right? So each application is processed based on its own merits. Now, if we could take away from our particular things, attorneys could take away certain things with regard to having query notices or making sure that certain things are conformed to with regard to each application, it can reduce the time, because probate did go through the entire process for us and they streamline particular applications. If an application generates a query notice, it goes down a longer procedure. If it doesn't generate a query notice, it goes through a faster procedure. Right? Now, that faster procedure is still 8 months, probably a year. But one of the things that is still what would have us still having delays, inordinate delays, unreasonable delays, is the staffing issue that probate has indicated.
I'm curious to know, in the instance where the executor of the will, if this process is so delayed, and for many reasons of which you've expressed this morning, and from which we know based off of the judiciary's response, if the executor of the will passes on during this entire process, what then happens? What then transpires?
So, like I said in the beginning, there are different types of applications to be made. So if there is a will and there is a named executor, that executor is entitled to prove that will, which is an application they make. We call it a grant of probate at the end of the day when they get it. Now, if the executor either passes or renounces his position, the beneficiaries, right, in the residue of the will are now entitled to make an application. It's called letters of administration with will annex. So it doesn't affect the proving of the will. It's just a different type of application with different requirements.
So then the process kind of begins all over again.
It does, if we made an application. So if in the process that the executor did die, right, after we made the application, then yes, we have to withdraw that particular application and the process starts again.
Now, my final question to you, what advice would you share to viewers this morning if they are facing these difficulties? Because, as I mentioned, one major part of the issue the judiciary has pointed out is the quality of applications, relevant or required documents not necessarily always being there. What would be your advice to people who are facing these frustrations?
Not to be intimidated by the process. It is a long process, but it needs to be done, because without it, you cannot move forward with regard to a deceased's assets. And what we see happening when people shy away from the process is that we see grandparents' estates not being done or great-grandparents' estates not being done, and then we have to go down a very long chain to see who is best to make those applications coming down. And they cannot really do much with the particular asset until those estates higher up are done, right? So if a loved one leaves a particular asset that needs to be administered, don't shy away from the process. Go to an attorney, find out how experienced they are in regards to matters of probate. The attorney will explain the process as much as possible. Know that there is a delay, right? The expectations, of course, are that we try to get certain things done as quick as possible so that clients feel like if they are completing this particular process in a timely manner, However, the expectations and the reality are two different things, and attorneys need to be able to alleviate the fears or the stress created by the actual process. With regard to the, sorry about that. With regard to I do apologize.
No, that's absolutely fine actually, because you've actually shared some sound advice to those viewing this morning. So no worries about that. And it's honestly quite a lot I mean, there's a lot more that we could have touched on, and there's a lot more to delve into. It's quite a lot to even digest. But that is where we actually conclude our conversation this morning, because we are over time, and I know that this conversation has been delayed, well, for many reasons. Quite ironic, isn't it, that the conversation was delayed? But Ms. Singh, thank you so very much for your time and joining me on the program this morning, and for sharing this information with all of us. And well, I guess we have an attorney at law whom we could call on to now give us more education and information on these issues when it arises within the public domain. So thank you so much for your time this morning.
You are most welcome.
Have a good day, Ms. Singh. All the very best.
You too.
Senior Law Science Singh joining me on the program this morning, and sound advice that she shared with us at the end of that conversation. Do not be intimidated by this entire issue, and she even spoke for attorneys really trying to help the situation or help the anxiety associated with the situation. So thank you very much, Ms. Singh, for your time. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for AM Prime. I'm Keaton Shaw, wishing you a good day ahead, a grand one, a safe one, and in all that has happened, I really hope that you enjoyed Carnival, you've gotten rest, as we now head into a period of reflection. We'll see you again tomorrow morning on the program. Take care now. Bye-bye.
WESN. FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
My name is Carl Media, and I'm the founder and the host of Ever Increasing Voice Ministries. Join me every Saturday and Sunday on WESN, this powerful station, at 9 a.m. on Saturdays, 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. nightly. Also on Sundays, I'll be on at 7 a.m., 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. at night time. When you come here, we are getting people heavenly ready.
You are watching Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Just give an overview of what exactly is that split arrangement.
Nah, you don't need to register nothing. You don't need, we can do that another time. But then it becomes a hit, and then everybody starts to want to claim.
The laws that predate many of the independent countries' constitutions are going to be those colonial laws.
We know there are an infinite amount of circumstances that would lead to a murder.
I have a great idea and, I have a great concept. But until it's actually expressed, it does not become intellectual property.
Accomplishments or targets of a forensic accountant is to quantify what may have been lost.
We believe we defend criminals and we manipulated the law and we exploited the system.
A responsible journalist will reach out to the person who they have the information on for a comment.
We are tackling the hard-hitting topics, some controversial topics, some topics we sweep under the rug. You don't always have to forgive in a relationship for it to move forward.
If it is you are in a situation where you forgive the person, but to the detriment of yourself, what are you really doing?
It is very uncommon for somebody in the younger age group to have dementia.
Atheists don't not believe.
Is that I can't disprove God, but you also can't prove God, so we kind of have to stalemate.
You'll focus on the woman who's being the victim,
right,
or the man who's being the victim. We exclude the children.
Folks are trying to study the underlying brain mechanism to figure out how does this particular disorder happen in the brain? How is the brain processing this?
Don't worry about AI, worry about humans working with AI.
Are you willing to learn new skills to stay relevant for the future job market? That's the challenge that people are going to struggle with.
The newest book is here, Closer to the Church, the debut novel by author and former mayor Louis Lee Singh. Available at all the home store branches, Barataria, West Mall, Shogunas and C3 San Fernando. Paper-based bookshop 10 Nook Avenue St. Anne's, WESN 30A Gattaca Street Woodbrook, Metropolitan Bookshop Ariapita Avenue Woodbrook, and all RIK bookstores nationwide. Available online as paperback on Amazon.com and Kindle for e-readers. For more info, call 628-5835 or 389-6504. Also available from author Louis Lee Singh, I Used to Live in Heaven, Letters to My Granddaughters, and Local Government in Trinidad, Conspiracy Against the People.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
We are WESN, the premier platform for Caribbean content. WESN, covering West, East, South, and North. WESN, we entertainment, sports, and news. WESN, available on Greendot 7, Amplia 118, Airlink 17, Bmobile 107, Digicel 21, ICNTT 105, and Flow 110. Connect with us at WESNCC or stream online at www.wesncc.com. WESN, your premier platform for Caribbean content.